Three friends. Three marriages. One idea that almost cost them everything. If you have ever wondered what happens when grown men get an idea they should never have acted on, this story has the answer. And by the end of it, you will understand exactly why some doors are better left closed. Let's start from the beginning. Our story follows three friends, each married, each living what looks like an ordinary domestic life. On the surface, everything seems fine. But underneath, there is restlessness. A feeling that marriage has become routine, predictable, almost boring. And it is this restlessness that sets the entire chain of events in motion. The trigger comes when the three friends attend an anniversary party for another couple, Kamraj and Manka. On paper, Kamraj and Manka have one of the most solid marriages anyone has seen. 10 years together, still affectionate, still playful, still clearly in love. Naturally, everyone assumes their secret must be something wholesome. Loyalty. Communication. Compromise. But the real secret turns out to be far stranger. Kamraj reveals that every year, for 1 week, he and his wife grant each other complete freedom. No questions asked. No explanations required. They call it their private arrangement, and according to them, this 1 week of freedom is exactly what keeps the other 51 weeks stable and happy. For our three friends, this idea lands like a spark on dry wood. At first, they laugh it off. It sounds absurd. Risky. Even dangerous. But the seed has been planted, and slowly, that seed grows into obsession. Each of them starts to wonder, quietly, what it would be like to have that same kind of freedom. Not because their marriages are falling apart, but because curiosity, once triggered, is hard to silence. Eventually, curiosity turns into a plan. Convinced that they deserve the same kind of arrangement, the three friends approach their wives with the idea. What follows is one of the most important character beats in the whole story. The wives do not simply refuse. Instead, after some hesitation, they agree to the arrangement. At the time, it feels like a victory for the husbands. In hindsight, it is the moment the story truly begins. Here is where the film shifts gears from setup to chaos. Each husband, now technically free for 1 week, tries to make the most of this new arrangement. But nothing goes according to plan. One misadventure after another leaves them exhausted, embarrassed, or simply unlucky. Every attempt at excitement turns into a disaster. What was supposed to be a week of liberation quickly becomes a week of humiliation. This is where the film's comedic engine really kicks in. The humor comes from watching overconfident men repeatedly fail at the very thing they were so eager to try. It is less about the specifics of what happens and more about the universal comedy of ego meeting reality. Each of them walks in expecting adventure and walks out with nothing but bruises, both physical and emotional. But while the husbands are busy failing spectacularly at their own freedom, something far more unsettling is happening on the other side. Their wives, now enjoying the same arrangement, appear to be attracting attention. Charismatic, mysterious men start appearing around them. To an outside observer, these men might seem harmless, even charming. But to three husbands already anxious and insecure about the arrangement they themselves proposed, this feels like a 5-alarm crisis. And so the story flips. The very men who wanted freedom now become desperate to protect what they were so eager to give away. Paranoia sets in. Jealousy sets in. And the three friends decide they must intervene, no matter the cost. What follows is a chaotic chain of undercover operations, each more ridiculous than the last. The friends disguise themselves, follow their wives from location to location, and repeatedly find themselves in absurd, high-stakes situations, all while trying to remain unseen. They stumble through parties, hospitals, and even a wild encounter involving a runaway horse, each scenario escalating the comedy while keeping the emotional stakes high. Every time it seems like they have the situation under control, something goes wrong. Every time they think they have protected their wives from a supposed threat, they end up in more trouble than before. It becomes a spiral of self-inflicted chaos, driven entirely by their own insecurity and their own poor decisions. And that, ultimately, is the emotional core of the story. These men are not being threatened by outside forces nearly as much as they are being undone by their own choices. The story uses comedy to explore a very real theme, the fear of losing control once you have voluntarily given some of it away. As the chaos builds toward its peak, the story delivers its biggest twist. Nothing that has happened was ever what it appeared to be. The entire ordeal, the mysterious men, the tension, the chase, all of it was carefully orchestrated. Not by outside villains, but by the wives themselves, working together with people they trust, to teach their husbands an important lesson. The revelation lands hard. The husbands, who were ready to blame outsiders, mysterious charmers, even fate itself, realized that the real problem was never external. It was their own restlessness. Their own poor judgment. Their own willingness to gamble with something valuable in exchange for something fleeting. In the final act, the story ties everything together with a message that feels almost old-fashioned in its simplicity, but lands effectively because of everything that came before it. Freedom without responsibility is not freedom at all. Trust, once tested, becomes stronger, not weaker. And some ideas that sound exciting in theory are exactly the ideas that should never be put into practice. By the end, the three friends walk away having learned their lesson the hard way. Their marriages survive, not because of some external rescue, but because their wives were wiser, more strategic, and ultimately more committed to the relationship than the husbands ever gave them credit for. Now let's talk about why this story works, structurally and emotionally, even with all its exaggerated comedy. First, the hook. The entire plot is built around one simple, memorable concept. A one-week arrangement with no rules. It is the kind of idea that instantly grabs attention because it is provocative, slightly taboo, and easy to explain in a single sentence. Good storytelling often relies on a single sticky concept that the audience can hold on to, and this story built its entire second half around exactly that. Second, the structure. Rather than following a single continuous plot, the story is essentially a series of connected set pieces. Each misadventure functions almost like its own mini-episode, loosely tied together by the central premise. This structure works particularly well for comedy, because it allows each scene to build its own tension and payoff without needing to carry the weight of the entire narrative. It also makes the content highly shareable, since individual moments can stand on their own. Third, the character dynamic. The three friends represent slightly different flavors of the same core flaw, overconfidence paired with poor judgment. This allows the story to explore the same theme from multiple angles without feeling repetitive. Meanwhile, the wives are written with more foresight and control than the husbands realize, which sets up a satisfying reversal once the truth is revealed. Fourth, the emotional stakes underneath the comedy. Even though the tone is exaggerated and absurd, the underlying fear driving the husbands is very real. The fear of losing a partner. The fear of being replaced. The fear of consequences catching up to bad decisions. This emotional undercurrent is what keeps the comedy from feeling completely weightless. Audiences laugh, but they also recognize the anxiety beneath the jokes. Fifth, the twist and resolution. By revealing that the wives orchestrated the entire chaos, the story flips the power dynamic in a way that feels earned rather than arbitrary. It transforms what could have been a simple slapstick comedy into a story with a clear moral through-line, reinforcing the idea that trust and partnership matter more than temporary excitement. Finally, the ending message. Despite everything, the story closes on a fairly traditional note: family and loyalty triumph over temptation and ego. This kind of resolution tends to resonate broadly, because it reassures the audience that no matter how chaotic the journey gets, the underlying values remain intact. So what can we take away from this story, whether you are a viewer looking for a laugh or a creator studying what makes comedy work? 1. A single strong concept can carry an entire narrative, even a chaotic one, as long as it stays central to every major plot beat. 2. Escalating set pieces keep audiences engaged because each new scenario raises the stakes and the absurdity just enough to maintain momentum. 3. Comedy lands harder when there is real emotional vulnerability underneath it. Fear, jealousy, and insecurity give weight to jokes that would otherwise feel hollow. 4. A well-placed twist can completely reframe everything that came before it, turning a straightforward chaos comedy into something with actual narrative payoff. And 5. Audiences tend to respond well to stories that ultimately affirm loyalty and partnership, even when the journey getting there is filled with mistakes, misunderstandings, and mayhem. In the end, this is a story about 3 men who thought freedom meant doing whatever they wanted, only to learn that real freedom comes from trust, not from escaping it. And that, ultimately, is why the story works. Not because of the chaos itself, but because of what the chaos reveals about the characters underneath it. Next part in my profile.